we're going to talk about Hanukkah, talk about where Hanukkah comes from. Okay, there's a show called Rugrats. Are you guys familiar with this show? Okay, I've watched a few episodes of the show. I don't really get what's going on. I don't know if they're hyper intelligent babies or if they're babies that teach or they represent all babies and they speak a certain secret language. When they talk to each other, sometimes their conversations seems to be on adult level. Sometimes they seem to be on baby level. I don't know. I don't really get the premise of Rugrats. Feel free to email me if you understand what the show is doing. But anyway, in any case, there was a Rugrats Hanukkah special, which I'm going to share with you guys 1 minute because I want to just show you guys what sort of a summary of the story of Hanukkah as it's commonly told before we start talking about sort of the origins and where this comes from. So here we go. Here are the Rugrats Hanukkah special. Or sorry, let me just do this again. Hold on a second. I messed this up. Let me just put it with Zoom. It's very important that you share when you share a screen for videos. You have to do it for like in a very specific way. And I will do it now. And here you go for your enjoyment, the Rugrats Hanukkah special.
So the people repaired their temple, but the Greeks had left only enough oil to burn in the menorah for one night.
But they lit the menorah anyway.
What are we gonna do? It'll take 8 days to make more oil.
What they needed was a miracle.
Yeah, a miracle, whatever that is. That's when something good happens that you thought could never happen. Well, that'll never happen.
But one day went by, and then another, and another, until finally, the 8 days had passed, and the flame was still burning. And to this day, we light the menorah every year to remember the miracle of Hanukkah.
Okay, those are the Rugrats explaining the miracle of Hanukkah story, miracle, oil, 8 days. I'm sure you guys are familiar. So the question is, where does the story come from? How do we have the stories? Big question. If you're thinking about the old days, the story of Hanukkah, which happened in around the year 160 BC, where are you going to look to get the story? What books are you looking at to get to get? Okay, I want to know what happened. I want the story. Where are you looking at? Don't be shy. Sorry, what?
The Torah? Yeah,
The Torah. Okay, Torah's a good guess. Okay, all right. I guess that would be the first thing you would say. So first answer is the Torah, or more specifically, we're going to expand that to the Tanakh, right? What's the difference between the Torah and Tanakh? Over here, you can see here the Torah is generally referred to the first 5 books of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew Scriptures, the Jewish Bible and Torah, and then we have other books, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, other prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and other such books in the Tanakh. So if you look in the Tanakh and you look in the Hebrew Bible, you are not going to find the story. Okay, it might be in one place, but there's no book specifically about the story of Hanukkah in the Tanakh in the Bible. And when you ask about the question is why, so you guess the question why, I don't necessarily have a great answer. Okay, one easy possibility is that the story of Hanukkah took place later historically than the other books of the Tanakh. So it's possible at a certain point they said, okay, Bible's finished, we're done, we're going to move on. And it didn't make it in. But so that's one possibility. Okay, but before we get to that, another question. Who decided what books go in the Bible? Somebody had to decide at one point. Who decides what's in Tanakh? Rebecca, you could guess. A lot of you guessed it. The rabbis. Okay, so one possibility is the rabbis. I was trying to imagine if the answer is the rabbis, what it would look like, the rabbis coming up with this idea that they decide what books are in the Tanakh. So I asked a cheap AI generator to make a picture of a conference room where they're making a conference discussion, what books should go in the Bible. Okay, it didn't turn out so well. You got the conference room, the spelling's a little off. We got a little way to go with the AI technology, at least the cheap the cheap free open access AA technology. Okay, let's continue this meeting, this conference of rabbis in their conference room. Let's put some rabbis. AI, give me rabbis. There we go. Here are rabbis sitting in the conference room, according to the AI generated image, deciding what's going to be in Tanakh. Why is one of the rabbis' head seem to be like on the side of his shoulders? I don't know. Maybe he's a special rabbi. Not a lot of head coverings on these rabbis, but a lot of good beards. So all men also, which would have been more or less representative of the time we've been talking about. We've been talking about rabbis from about 2,000 years ago. And at that time, the rabbinic class was almost 100% male. We have 2 or 3 exceptions at the time period we might be talking about. So it's possibly the rabbis sat around. And people who believe the rabbi theory, they're generally putting it around the 2nd century. And they're saying around the 2nd century, a bunch of rabbis got together. Let's give some names to these rabbis sitting in our conference room, our anachronistic conference room. So rabbis are generally attributed for this discussion is Rabbi Akiba would have been one of them. Or Rabbi Shimon, a few other ones that we'd have from the time of the sort of the 2nd century rabbis who are discussing what books should go into the Jewish Bible. Okay, what would be the rules? What makes books go in or not go in? So we have some discussions in the Talmud that may or may not be talking about this sort of thing. If the content is appropriate, if it's in line with their values, those are things that are discussed in the Talmud. Is maybe if you believe the rabbi theory. The other theory is that it wasn't like a rabbinic committee. It's just sort of some books got accepted over time, sort of naturally. We don't know without a time machine what it is, but we do know that there was a book written that very well could have been a biblical book about the Chanukah story. It could have been multiple. We're going to focus on 1 or 2 books called the Books of the Maccabees. The Book of the Maccabees were written about the same time as the Maccabee story. They were written, we received them in Greek, though a lot of scholars think the first 2 books of Maccabees, especially the first book of Maccabees, was originally in Hebrew and then was translated later into Greek, and then we lost the original Hebrew copy. If it was the rabbis or if it was Jewish people on whole not putting this book into the Bible, one of the reasons you would say is that maybe because it was in Greek. We don't have Greek books in the Tanakh. We have some Greek words that pop up here and there, but we don't have any Greek books in the Tanakh. So maybe if it was originally Greek, again, maybe it's too late. Maybe they didn't like some things in the story. There's some things in the story that maybe we'll talk about later, maybe not, that rabbis may not have liked. Other religions, though, who did co-opt our Bible, do have it in theirs. Here we go. Here's a nice little picture over here. This is what's called the Books of the Apocrypha. Certain churches, Christian traditions, have these books in their Bible, including the Catholic Church, called it's called the Apocrypha, different books. They're nice books. Some of them are in line with Jewish rabbinic values. Some of them are less so. But the one, if you look at the bottom right corner over here, we have 1 and 2 Maccabees. So if you look at Tanakh, you could look at the story of the book of the Maccabees. So Allegra and Rebecca, good job, full points for your guess of the Torah, close enough, right? Because it could have been. Okay, so one possibility is that a biblical book. So we don't exactly have a biblical book, but we have this book, which is a Jewish book, an old Jewish book. And let's go look at the story over here about what they tell about the story of this. But before this, let's get a little bit of background, exact historical background, what's going on. And this we know a lot from the Book of the Maccabees and other places. Here's a bit of background. Okay, once upon a time, there was a Greek emperor called Alexander the Great, and he took over the entire known world. And then he died. And when he died, he split his kingdom to 3 different kingdoms over here. And you can look at over here. We have here the Ptolemaic over there in Egypt and heading into Africa. And the area that we're talking about is Seleucid Empire, which dips down here into Israel, up to Lebanon, Syria, heading east. So this is an area that was in charge of Israel, the Seleucid empires. The Jews were living there at the time under Greek rule, right? First, they're under Persian rule, which is usually pretty okay. There are a couple hitches. There are a couple problems with the Persian rules. One of the stories that was a book of the Tanakh that deals with the Persian rule, an unfortunate time in the Persian rule, is the story of Esther at Purim, where there was a government proposal for cleansing all the Jews from the river to the sea, which river was all the rivers and all the seas. This Purim story was a Persian attempt where a government official Haman proposed genocide against of the Jews. It didn't work, and that's the origins of the holiday Purim. But mostly it worked out pretty well under the Persians. The Persians were fought by the Greeks. Alexander the Great was fine. If you have any Jewish friends who are named Alex or Alexander, which you may think about it, yeah, you know that guy. It's because Jews were named Alex generation after generation, going all the way back thousands of years in appreciation because they lived pretty well under Alexander the Great. But in the time of Hanukkah, things started to fall apart. There was a king named Antiochus. I'm not going to get into the whole details, but it was a combination of Jewish political infighting, Greek religious persecution, and other aspects that led to a Jewish revolt. And this revolt was carried out by the Maccabees. The Maccabees is an anachronism. That is not what their name is. One of them was nicknamed Maccabee Judah, but they were called the Hasmoneans, and they took over this whole area over here, and they had a kingdom for about 200 years, a little less than 200 years. There was a Hasmonean Jewish kingdom in Israel. Okay, so that's the general background to the Hanukkah story. But let's talk about specifically Hanukkah. Rebecca, have you been lighting?
Of course.
Have you been lighting? All right.
Yeah.
What day is today? We're on different days right now.
It's the 4th, right?
I'm on the 4th. I think you're on the 3rd. Am I right?
Well, last night was the 3rd, and today we're at
Yeah, I'm on the 4th, you're on the 3rd. So you're lighting, and the question is, where's this specific holiday? It's a specific holiday that comes on a specific Jewish date, the 25th day of the month of Kislev, and the 25th day of the month of Kislev. What is this holiday? Meaning, we had this big war. We had a lot of conflicts. Eventually, the Hasmonean Empire expands, and it lasts for a few hundred years. But what is this specific day of the 25th of Kislev? So the specific aspect of the holiday of Hanukkah is based around this building right over here, which is, it's not exactly this building. This is a depiction of the Beit HaMikdash, the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, located on the not creatively named in English Temple Mount, Har HaMashif in Arabic, Har HaBayit in Hebrew. And this is a temple. This is not exactly how a temple would have looked like in the times of the Maccabees. This looks more like Herod's temple. Like a couple hundred years later, Herod goes and he, not a couple hundred years, about 130 years later, Herod goes and he redesigns a temple, and he makes this very, very big, beautiful temple. But at the time of Maccabees, it would have been much smaller. But anyway, it's focused on the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, questions. What did Jews do in the temple in the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem? What are things you do over there? Eilat, do you want to turn?
I mean, at the time of the temple, there were sacrifices.
Sacrifices. Let's start with this. Let's start with sacrifices. That is true. There were sacrifices in the temple. Let's see. Can we get a picture here of sacrifices? I might have a picture of sacrifices over here. We got over here. Here we go. This is the altar with sacrifices. This would have been in the outside area of the temple. Okay, let's go back to this picture. You see there's a few outdoor areas, right? You have this big outdoor area on the lower side here. This would have been to orient ourselves. Here, can I draw over here and sort of make the thing? Do you guys see me draw right now? Do you see this? Okay. So this area over here is sort of the outer area where people would hang out, and people would go in and spend their time there. There's another outdoor area in here, which is special for priests. And what I'm circling right now is the altar, right? The altar has to be outside because otherwise things get very, very smelly and smoky. You can see over here the big smoke up there and the burning wood. Over here, there's our Kohanim, or Jewish priests, who are going and bring the sacrifices over here up here, pouring blood. These guys are Leviim, Levites, who are playing the instruments. And sacrifice was a big part of the temple that was done in the Second Temple period. Okay, what else? What else was done in the temple besides sacrifice? This is the harder part.
Were there ceremonies?
There were definitely ceremonies. Okay, let's count it. Let's go to ceremonies. What kind of ceremonies we got? Okay, so let's go now inside this building. Okay, inside this building. This building is split into two things. The back part over here on the west. Okay, let's orient ourselves. Where is the western wall? Where's the kotel? It's like over here. This is where the kotel is, the western wall. This is the southern wall. Like Rebecca, we hung out. We hung out on the southern wall. We went there one time. You might remember we walked all the way up here to the southern wall. And over here, okay, east and north. Okay, so the back west, there's a section here called the Holy of Holies. What's in there? In the Second Temple period, nothing was there. It was an empty room. But it was considered to be the holiest place in the world, where in Jewish traditions, all kinds of things may have happened. God created the world from that spot, or Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac from that spot, all sorts of things. And that day, only the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, would go in on Yom Kippur. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the first part of this building over here. In this building, there were ceremonies. What kind of ceremonies here? We got three things inside this building. We have a place to burn incense, INCENSE, right? Incense, a little altar for incense. We have another thing where they put out bread. It's about special sacrificial bread. They call the lechem hapanim, translating English as a shoe bread in there. And the third ceremony that took place over there was, don't say it all at once, what they do inside that building, there was a
Menorah.
There you go. There was a menorah. There was a menorah. Look at that menorah. This is the priest. One of the priest's jobs to light a menorah. Now, the menorah, as pointed out by you guys, was a ceremony, meaning it's not functional. You don't need the light of the menorah necessarily, but it was done every single day. It was lit. Okay, what do we notice about this menorah? Something's about menorah. Tell me, what surprises you about this menorah? You guys have seen menorahs before in your lives. What is different about this menorah?
It has 7 instead of 9.
7 instead of, try again, 7 instead of 9. 7 instead of 9. The one you have in your house is 9.
Yeah.
Okay. So 7 instead of 9, because there's a 1 in the middle and you have 4. So that's one thing to notice. So, okay. It's a good start, right? Remember that. It's 7 here. Why is there 7? Very easy answer. Because the Torah says so. Torah says you have 7, you have 7. Come with different reasons, different symbolic reasons for 7, but there has to be 7 that's interesting to note. What else is different about this? What else surprises you about this picture of menorah? Okay, I will tell you what surprises me. This is, menorah is generally, look how angular it is. When we think of menorah, we think of something that looks more like this. Can you guys identify where this specific picture of the menorah is from?
That's in Rome, isn't it?
That's in Rome, correct, on the Arch of Titus, right? So it's a depiction on the Arch of Titus when the Romans eventually destroyed this temple, which is going to happen about 250 years or so, 230 years after the Maccabees. They're going to steal all the stuff, and they steal this menorah, which kind of looks like what we think of when we think of menorah. We got these nice rounded, what it's called, kanim, I forget what it's called in English. Branches, they're branches, nice rounded branches. The menorah over here. Look at that, so nice little round things over here. And this is what it looks like. And there's a lot of big little questions in archaeologists and scholars what the menorah in the temple actually looked like. Did it look like this? Did it look like this? It's possible. One answer can make everybody happy is that this, which is how it's described in rabbinic writings, is the way it was on the inside of the temple. This was a ritually lit menorah. But of course, they had other menorahs all over the temple. Why would you need menorahs all over the temple? Because menorahs provide light. So maybe they had other menorahs that looked like this all over the place as sort of decorative or functional menorahs. Okay, keep those in mind that we have this menorah over here with our 7 branches, and that was lit every day, because that is going to lead us into the story of Chanukah. Because again, 2 things we have to know about Chanukah before we start. It's on a specific day, the 25th of Kislev. The other thing we note is that we light candles on Chanukah. For how long, what year in Jewish history we start lighting candles on Chanukah, I can't tell you exactly. Lots of different theories about this, but the earliest writing we have about this is from Josephus, which is a very, very long time ago. You're talking about around the year 80 or so. So you're talking about very, very, very long time ago, Jews were lighting candles on Chanukah. Let's go see the story. Where does Chanukah start with? And let's see who agrees with the Rugrats and who does not. Okay, here we go. Back to where we were before. We have a book. It's not in the Bible. Why is it not in the Bible? We don't know. You can come up with theories. If you want to say it's not in the Bible because the rabbis in their committee in that conference room decide they didn't like the story, that's totally valid. And there are plenty of very, very serious scholars that say it. If you're going to say it's just an accident of history that it was written in the wrong time, that's also fine. People say it as well. But let's go look at the story. Okay. Now, Judah the Maccabees, Judah and his followers, the Lord leading them on, recovered the temple in the city. Remember, they're in a war, and they recovered the temple. They tore down the altars that had been built in the public square by the foreigners and also destroyed the sacred precincts. So they destroyed all the Greek idolatry. They purified the sanctuary and made another altar of sacrifice. Then, striking a fire to flint, they offered sacrifices. After a lapse of 2 years, and they offered incense and lighted lamps instead of the bread of the presence. So they go and they redo all the things we talked about you do in the temple. They're bringing sacrifices for the first time in 2 years, because for 2 years they couldn't, because of Greek persecution. They're putting this bread, they're lighting the incense, they're presumably lighting the menorah as well. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention about Hanukkah. So we're going to say it's on the 25th Kislev. We light candles. And in Adam Sandler's words, instead of only 1 day, it's how long?
8 days.
Yeah, go ahead. Adam Sandler, that's not what he said. 8 crazy nights. You're not familiar with the Adam Sandler song?
I forgot about. It's like, yeah, 8 crazy nights. I remember now.
Okay, 8 crazy nights. Okay, go back. Okay, that should be your okay. Make sure you listen to that. 8 crazy nights. So we have 8 nights. What is this 8 nights significance? That's what we have to think about. We have to think about the date. We have to thinking about candles. We have to thinking about the fact that it is 8 crazy nights. So let's go back to our text over here. So they go in and they they go and they do the things they do. When they've done this, they fell prostrate and implored the Lord, and they never fall against such misfortunes. But if they should ever sin, they might be disciplined by him with forbearance, etc., etc. Okay, so they go. They're very happy. They have the temple. They thank God. Why do they thank God? They're very religious people. Everybody here is very, very religious. They're thanking God for the miracle. It happened on that same day. Here we go on the second paragraph now. Which is sanctuary but profaned by foreigners. The purification of the sanctuary took place as on the 25th day of the same month, which was Kislev. So the 25th of Kislev, which is the day that the Greeks first took over the temple, that's the day the Jews saved the temple. They celebrate for 8 days with rejoicing in the manner of the festival of booths. And to remember the festival of booths, which is Sukkot. Remember, not long before the festival of booths, Sukkot, they've been wandering around the caves like wild animals. Meaning that he said, so they that year use Sukkot. Sukkot is 8 days long. On Sukkot, you do different celebrations, and the temple part of the celebration would have been to take the 4 species, lulav, etrog, other plants. Okay, I should put this in the slideshow. But in any case, they would celebrate that for 8 days. They couldn't this year because they had been wandering in the mountains and caves like wild animals. Therefore, carrying ivy wreathed wands and beautiful branches, and also palm fronds, which was a Sukkot ceremony. They offered hymns of thanksgiving to him who had given success in purifying of his own holy place. Here comes the important part. They decreed by public edict, ratified by vote, that the whole nation Jews should observe these days every year. Meaning, on the 25th of Kislev, they celebrate Sukkot for 8 days. They celebrate Chanukah for 8 days. Why 8 days? Because remembering that year when they celebrated Sukkot. So we have here the 25th of Kislev. We have here 8 days. We have one thing here that's missing from the story. What aspect of Hanukkah is not in the book of the Maccabees? We have the date. We have the 8 days. One more thing about Hanukkah we want to find.
The light that lasted
Lighting.
for 8 days.
Light. We don't have any lighting. We don't have any commandment. Okay, light lasting for 8 days is jumping ahead. Okay, that's true. But we don't even have any commemoration that you light candles at all. We have no candles in the book of the Maccabees. And it's like to note that the miracle over here, we don't have, to Elon's point, we don't have here the 8-day miracle. Okay, so this is our Tanakh. It's not our Tanakh. It's as close as we get to Tanakh. So we looked at our Tanakh. We didn't see anything Tanakh, but we found the parallel book, and we found the old Jewish book, and it tells us the story of God doing a miracle and this big celebration, 8 days in Kislev, but we were missing the lights. We don't have any lights, and we don't have the miracle. We have God helping us in a war, but we don't have a miracle. Okay, where else are we going to look? 2,000 years ago, we want to know what happened in this Hanukkah story. We already went through the Tanakh. We got what we can. Where else can we find information about Chanukah? Try it, Rebecca. Worst thing that'll happen is that 3 people will laugh at you, not more than 3. You're on mute.
Besides the Torah, there's probably more in the Tanakh than.
Okay, so we went through the Tanakh, and so it's not in the Tanakh, but it's in this parallel book, the Book of the Maccabees, which is the Apocrypha. Okay, which Jewish literature is going to come after the Tanakh? So we finished the Tanakh. What's our next stage in our Jewish literature?
Talmud?
The Talmud, right. So the Talmudic traditions, all traditions of the rabbis, which start about, we'll say the 1st century, early 2nd century. I mean, some of the traditions we have go all the way back to the 1st century BC, and going forward, they're eventually be compiled in the Talmud. Okay, so let's go see what does the Talmud have to say about the Hanukkah story. Okay, here's Josephus. That's another guy we've done. We're going to skip him for now. Okay. There is, before there was a Talmud, okay, this is a little known thing, okay? This is something that only like 0.001% of Jewish people know. But now you guys are going to know this, so show off about this. There was, if you were a Jew living in the Second Temple period, your bookshelf would have had 2 books on it. It would have had a Tanakh, and it wouldn't have any other books except for this one book called Megillat Ta'anit, or the Scroll of the Fast Days. In the old days, people used to fast a lot, right? If there wasn't enough rain, you would fast. If you're about to go to war, you fast. If you had a bad dream, you would fast. And this was considered to be a form of repentance to help you out, and people used to fast often. So there a scroll was written called the Scroll of the Fast Days, which said all the holidays that you're not allowed to fast, right? These are holidays or happy days you're not allowed to fast. And in this old scroll, it says there's this holiday called Chanukah, which is 8 days long. And then there are commentaries, rabbinic commentaries from, let's say, more or less the time of the Talmud, that explain what happened on Chanukah. And it's as follows. Question, why do they make Chanukah 8 days long? So we saw one answer already, because it's parallel holiday of Sukkot. And so it says here, drop down to second paragraph over here. For the time of the Greek kingdom, the Hasmoneans entered the sanctuary, built an altar, covered it with plaster, and made the holy vessels, which took them 8 days. So the miracle of Hanukkah, which is 8 days long, is nothing here yet about the candles burning for 8 days. It says the reason why we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 days is because that's how long it took them to fix the temple. Okay, so that's the 8 days. So we ask the question, why did they say we should light candles? Okay. For in the time of the Greek kingdom, when the Hasmoneans entered the sanctuary, and they had 7 iron spears in their hand, possibly because they were just at war, so they were like handing their spears, they covered them with wood and lit the menorah with them. So meaning, according to this Talmudic tradition, the Maccabees, they go into the temple. It's a big, big mess. So they do 2 things. One is they fix it. It takes 8 days to fix it. So that's why you have Hanukkah for 8 days. They also had to build a menorah, and to remember that they had to build a menorah, that's why we have Hanukkah for 8 days. And that is Talmudic tradition number 1. So we got our 25th of Kislev. We got our 8 days. We have why we light candles, but we do not yet have a source for the Rugrats story. Where does the Rugrats story come from? Where does it come from? So that is a different Talmudic tradition. And this Talmudic tradition, here we go. We already saw this before earlier by these old men telling the story to these babies. And this is also the Talmud Bavli Shabbat. What is the reason for Hanukkah? For rabbis taught on the 25th of Kislev, there's that date again, are the 8 days of Hanukkah, which you can't lament and you can't fast because they're happy days. Why? For when the Greeks entered the temple, they made all the oils ritually impure, and the Hasmonean dynasty prevailed against them and defeated them. They searched and found only 1 cruse of oil, which weighed to seal the high priest, which is only sufficient for 1 day's lighting of the menorah. Yet a miracle occurred and lit menorah for 8 days from that cruse. The following year, these days are appointed a festival for praise and thanksgiving. So, again here, we have the 25th of Kislev. Why the 25th of Kislev? Because that's when they went to the temple. Why 8 days, and why do we light candles? So in this Talmudic story, that's the same thing. The 8 days and the candles are both because of the miracle of the oil. Okay, let's take a step back here. Let's talk about how God interacts with the world. I don't know, but let's talk about how people see God interacting with the world. We have here a few different versions. All these people from the Book of the Maccabees and from both Talmudic traditions are both very religious, and they both all see God's hand in history and God interacting in the world. But it's a little bit different. In the book of the Maccabees, God helps them win a war. They have to fight the war. They lost people. People died fighting the war. A few of the Maccabees died. Most interesting ways that Maccabees died had to be by being stepped on by elephants. If you're going to go, that's a great way to do it. Okay, we all got to go sometime. Being stepped on by an elephant, that's something. So Maccabees died fighting the war, but they were able to win the war. They beat the Greek Empire. They were able to establish a Jewish kingdom, and they thank God for that miracle. Second story, very similar. They kick the Greeks out. They get to the temple, and they're able, to assistance of God, to rebuild the temple and clean everything up. And that's what we remember it. The third story, though, is a little bit different. In the third story, we don't have God just assisting them, but we have an explicit supernatural miracle. Let's define this term: supernatural, super, more than natural nature, right? There's a natural order to the world, right? The sun rises in the morning and sets at night. It doesn't actually. We're actually rotating, but we'll talk that way because that's our perspective. But and we know that no matter what, that's going to happen. We always know that H2O is going to make water. We always know that's the way the world works. But the story and we also know that oil, if you burn it, it will go through the what's called wick, and it's all going to burn up. And it's going to go away. But in this story of God doing a supernatural miracle, he interferes with the laws of nature, and he makes it last for 8 days. And these are kind of different respects that people have throughout Jewish history. How do you see God in the world, right? Is God somebody who's helping us in different ways that maybe we see or don't see? Or is God doing these supernatural miracles that go and affect and change the way the world works? There's a debate throughout Jewish history, and the great Jewish philosophers all debate at this point. But I want to focus on sort of the perspective on what it means in terms of seeing God in the world and who would see it in which way. The tradition that we saw from about the 8 days of the oil is found in the Babylonian Talmud. And these people were not living in Israel; they were living in what's called Babylon, what we would call Persia. They're living under Zoroastrian rule. They're not Jews with it's compiled, say, between the 3rd and 8th centuries, let's say. This tradition would be an older one. So I would say it's like a 3rd century Babylonian tradition. It might come from Israel, but I have my reasons to think it's a Persian tradition, a Babylonian Jewish tradition. And they're not living in a world where they're fighting wars anymore. They're fighting in a world where they're, starting yeshivas and studying Torah and trying to do mitzvot and do things that Jews started to do for the next 1,500 years before we had an army again in the 20th century. And for them, the idea of God is okay, God's interaction world. The idea of has to be miraculous, right? When God comes to the world, anything can happen. But the Jews, like in the book of the Maccabees, or maybe this other tradition that we saw in the rabbinic tradition, who are living in Israel, they have a little different perspective. For them, God's not somebody who's comes in and nowhere and does miracles that you can never understand. When you go to war, you fight war, and you might you win some battles, you lose some battles. But if you're successful, people attributed their success to God, not because God did supernatural things and all, and lightning bolts came out of the sky and killed all the enemies, but because they just saw God's hand in helping them. Okay. What do you do when you are in Israel right now? And maybe if you're maybe for you guys in America, it might be true. Well, are you in any WhatsApp groups that look like this? Okay, look at this WhatsApp group. Here's a WhatsApp group. I have some of these. These are friends of mine who are at war right now, right? Friends of mine are at war, and they send updates. Sometimes people send WhatsApp statuses. I'm a bit older than you guys. Everybody in this room looks like they're young enough to probably be using Instagram more, or maybe TikTok. For me, it's WhatsApp, but it's like WhatsApp statuses, or they have WhatsApp groups, and they keep you posted. And this is a friend of mine. His name is Akiva Weiss. The last time I saw Akiva Weiss was on it was on Shavuot of last year. Were you guys in my Shavuot group? Which mini master were you guys? No, you guys were in the summer. You guys were in the summer, right? You guys in the summer. So you were in the my Shavuot group. So, and there I said, and since then I've been trying to convince him to teach at Mas. He's a great guy. I want him to teach at Mas. Maybe he'll do it after this war. We'll see if I can convince him. But this is something that he sent out about his things. He says, okay, I'll read a little bit over here. He says, wow, so much to share. We just returned from 5 days in Jabalia. This got on Friday. The battle continues extremely intense. The absolute miracles that are taking place are simply indescribable. You have to understand something. This war is progressing at a rate that defies logic, defies all natural laws of warfare, and the fact that our casualty numbers are so low is simply a nace. Yes, a nace. Nace is the Hebrew word for miracle. And Saul is doing indescribable, remarkable things. I hope to write more on this later, but for now I have to share some photos from last night. We lit candles in Jabalia, and the intensity of the aura, the light, the energy of the Chayalim was palpable. I cannot describe the feeling that sent upon us as Chanukah approach. A battle that we thought would take a month to complete had progressed in a matter of days. I hear on the radio how our forces are killing terrorists by dozens and less than the hundreds, and it's simply unbelievable. I don't know how close you guys are following the news, but like every single day here, you hear terrible news about 1 or 2 or 3 soldiers being killed. But we also see all of a sudden a whole new area has been taken over. The trepidation of how long this war was going to take, and how difficult it was going to be, was very, very strong in the beginning. And now Israel, their last statement, they said they think they'll be done completely within 2 months. I don't know if you guys have seen these pictures of like they go into of these mass what's the word? Not retreats, but when people give themselves up. Which word? Okay.
Surrender.
Okay. Sorry, what?
Surrender.
Surrender. Thank you. Mass surrenders, right? Look at what it's like. You see pictures also. It's like 200 terrorists come out with their guns over their heads, wearing stripped down to their underwear. They have to be stripped down to their underwear to make sure they don't have anything hidden, and just like hundreds and hundreds of terrorists just like being taken over. And it's unbelievable to see these mass surrenders that are going on. He says the stories of heroism and the bravery of their strength that are being shared in situational meetings is an awe-inspiring phenomenon. And then he talks about the other side. On the other side, however, the reality of the depravity and loathsomeness we witness every day of our enemies incomprehensible. My friends, every single mosque, school, and hospital is a base of operations for Hamas. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. Every single one, with the lab crew acting as the stronger points, as they have far more women and children who frequent them. And he goes on and talks about that. And he talks about how terrible it is that over the civilians. But Israel, we're trying to avoid all these civilian casualties, and the race are going. It's an incredible, incredible thing. And this is something that we think about. When we think about Hanukkah, it's a different way to think about the miracle of Hanukkah, other than the miracle of the oil, right? With the blessings we have on the Hanukkah candles, we have 3 blessings over here. And the middle blessing goes like this. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa nisim la'avotenu b'yamim hahem b'zman hazeh. Right? Bless you, God, who performed miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. And one way to say, okay, in those days there were real miracles like the miracle of oil, and nowadays, okay, God's not really in the world. But if you look at least 2 of the Hanukkah stories that we saw today, the story that we have right now, we see right now, is very, very similar to what people had back then. And the idea that we're in a direct continuation of this tradition of Jews going to war and hopefully with the help of God succeeding. And with that, I'll share with you guys this video, which was from the first night of Hanukkah. And maybe you've seen videos like this. They're amazing, amazing videos of soldiers lighting candles in the Gaza Strip. Sorry, I forgot to do the fancy share screen. Hold on a second. Share screen. Here we go. Great. Okay, you guys see it? Okay, great.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהביא לשנות מצוותיו וציוונו כי יפנה שמך אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשה ניסים לאבותינו ויחי בהם בזמן שהחיינו, וקיימנו, והגיענו לזמן הזה. אמן. שאנו מדליקים, הנרות שאנו מדליקים, על הניסים.
So them lighting the candles, saying the blessing of the miracles that they have, that the miracles that we have are like the miracles in the old days, in some ways can be seen as very, very literally. So our soldiers should continue to have success. All the hostages should be freed, and we should all see miracles in our day.